So, Laurie, what is Engenius?
Engenius is, let's see now, 19 years old this year. We started up originally as a means of providing my technical services, but we realised a few years ago that we needed to look at tomorrow's level of business, tomorrow's areas of business. We cast around from where we felt business growth was going to come from in the future and identified renewables. And since my background is electrical, we thought we'll start doing solar power and wind power, and that's where it was. And that's where we are today.
So what is your background in renewable energy systems?
I worked with Trinity House Lighthouse Service for several years when they were in the process of solarising all their lighthouse stations onshore and offshore, so I learned my trade the hard way.
And what is the current situation with renewable energy systems? Are they still mainly for the early adopters, or are they becoming more mainstream?
Well, there's been a big change in the last few months. Prior to that, they were indeed for early adopters, and there were various government support schemes around to encourage them to do that. They were all dropped at a stroke in February, and as of April the 1st, we've had a tariff system in place whereby renewable systems will qualify for government support indirectly through the power companies, which makes renewable investments now really quite attractive. They're earning 8, 9, 10%, which in today's climate is very good. There's a straight incentive payment. Everything you generate through your solar power, your wind turbine, or hydro turbine now counts for credit at a fixed rate, and that credit's in place for the next 25 years. So you've got a guaranteed cash stream by generation, and then in addition you're either going to displace power you'd otherwise have bought from the grid and therefore save money, or you export your surplus power into the grid and get paid for it. So there's actually 3 elements to the revenue stream now. Since that change was formalised, demand has gone through the roof, I'm happy to say. People who previously would have done it for green reasons, because they wanted to contribute to the planet, they're still there, but they now have the added reason of doing it, which is it is now a definite positive investment. They're focusing on the ones that are easiest to install on existing properties, and that means for the most part PV and some solar thermal. But for the time being, the incentive scheme extends only to PV, and therefore PV is well ahead of the game at the moment.
So for a typical property, what sort of PV installation would you be looking at?
Most properties end up with a system which is about the 1.5 kilowatt mark, which means it's going to generate something like 1,200 units a year of electricity, which is typically about a third of a household's requirements. And that's about the right size because it means that the household will get best value from that. That's going to be an installed cost of somewhere around the £10,000 mark, and it's going to earn somewhere around £900 a year in income and avoided cost. It's not practical to store energy, but you don't need to. When you're generating it, like now we're in bright sunshine, generating very well, the household will be using some power. It will always use the generated power first. Any surplus then is not stored, as you say, it goes into the mains, but that's metered and the householder is paid for that energy sent into the mains. So there's never any wasted. In terms of working out what you need, we would normally spend an hour or two with you discussing what you want to achieve and how the layout might be in your house, which part of the house you think is appropriate for the display. And then the actual installation takes typically 2 days, possibly 2.5 days.
Now, I've heard a lot of figures banded around and people talking about payback over a lifetime of, say, 25 years. Aren't these systems that we're installing now going to be outdated within 5 years, say? And isn't the 25-year lifespan that is quoted a bit unrealistic?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. A little while ago, you'd have been right in thinking it was a 25-year payback. That's all changed. Because of the new tariff scheme, paybacks are now down to perhaps 10, 12 years. The second is that, yes, of course, technology will evolve and we'll see changes in years to come. We don't know when or what they're going to be, but that doesn't take away any benefit from doing it right now. The investment here is still valid in its own right. So I've heard the argument that we should wait till it gets better. Why? It's working now.
I gather you've done one for Plaza Ice Cream, who we're going to go and talk to.
Oh yes, interesting one. You asked me earlier about the fact that the generation occurs in the middle of the day when the sun's up high, when people tend to be out. Yes, that's absolutely true. In the case of Plaza Ice Cream, who of course have to store their ice cream in the middle of the summer in their freezers are working hardest in the middle of the day. So it's an exact match of demand versus supply for the PV array feeding the freezers. A very good system. Modern PV systems work straight into the mains. There's no need for batteries. The inverter is connected straight into your fuse box, so your household will use the power first. If there's any surplus power, it gets sent into the mains. Any shortfall of power, it comes in from the mains in the usual way. So there's no need to store. We just generate it and use it on site so far as it's possible to do so.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of Plaza Ice Cream's freezers in their vans. What sort of system are they working on?
Well, he's able, of course, to charge his vans up overnight, but he's also got them cycling quite fast now. His vans come back for a top-up several times during the day, so he can do a recharge then. So he's making the best possible use of his PV power.
We went to an exhibition at the Riverside about green energy and eco, etc. And that's where we met Laurie Tennant from Engenius, and we were told the benefits of solar PV panels.
Now, did you make that decision based on the fact that you wanted just to be green, or what about the economic considerations?
Well, I am a businessman, and I do look upon this really, if I'm honest, I can see the financial benefits as well. The whole installation cost are in the region of £9,000, but we benefited from a £2,500 grant from the government, and also we now get paid 41p per kilowatt hour which we produce. We're producing about 10 kilowatts per day, and our ice cream vans use about 3 kilowatts per day to charge up. That's 3 ice cream vans and a total of 11 freezers at our home.
So you use the solar panels to charge the vans, makes it the whole thing even greener?
Yes, exactly. It's any we don't use goes back to the grid, and again we get paid for that. We've, as you know, got the licence to trade in St James's Square, Newport. And one of the things the council were pleased about is that once we get there, we turn the engine off and there's no noise and no fumes for the rest of the day.
So do you think the island's a really good market for your products?
For two reasons. The island has one of the best sunshine ratios of the whole of the country, and therefore the systems we put in always exceed the expectations the customer has, which is the way it should be, of course. The second thing is that the Isle of Wight is probably more eco-conscious than many parts of the country. Eco Island really kicked off, 4 or 5 years ago under Steve Bainan, and was very effective in raising awareness of what individuals could do in order to increase the greenness of both the Isle of Wight and their own households. And I think that impetus is still there, and I'd be sorry to see that lost. I hope we can recover Eco Island and get it back to where it was a couple of years ago.
I mean, how important is it for the island to develop green industries such as renewables?
Well, the island needs tomorrow's business. We have to look at where our future employment is going to come from. In the past, we've done it through shipbuilding and aircraft and so on. Well, those are still there, but they're no way that they're tomorrow's businesses. One of the beauties of renewables is that you can do things on a small scale, and they're economically effective. We have the opportunity here with the skills base that we've got in terms of our manufacturing background, coupled with people's eco-awareness, to start putting together businesses, possibly small businesses, which can capitalise on that.
What's your position on wind farms for the island?
The island, as everywhere else, needs to contribute to tomorrow's sources of power. And we might not like it very much, but we're going to have to sooner or later. Now, the island's multiply blessed. We mentioned the sunshine level earlier. It has one of the best wind resources in the country. It's also got one of the 2 best tidal resources in the country at St Catherine's Point. We have got to develop all those, and if we don't, we're failing in our duty. So even though I don't particularly like the idea of having the back of the island smothered in wind farms, we've got to do something. And I hope we can do that sensitively. I think we can. There are locations we could use on the island which aren't as sensitive as have been chosen so far. And it may be a matter of scale too. We should be looking perhaps at more smaller machines rather than single large machines.